Hi, welcome back everyone to our series of reigniting the fragments of the fourth way. This is, I'm not sure which episode it is, we'll put it there. And yeah, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. I have a feeling that Peter has some questions for me. And yeah, so we can start.
Yes, in fact, I did. I did want to surprise you too, because it's a topic we've been talking around a fair amount in these videos, and it pertains so much to what we're sharing here, and it pertains very much to the work you've been doing the last 10 or 12 or more years with your clients in psychotherapy, especially around the area of emotional repression related to trauma. And I thought it would be interesting to ask you more or less spontaneously here. Because you were in the fourth way and you studied the fourth way for many years, 10 or more years, 15 years, and then you ventured into different varieties of spirituality in the non-dual arena, let's say. And then you got involved with psychotherapy work. And that led you more into a more specific channel of this repression work that you do, the shadow work. And I wanted to ask you, Mihai, how do you see this overlap? You have been doing this work. How has it, let's say, affected what you understood from the fourth way? What now is more specific for you in this area of repression that perhaps was not when you were just looking at, just studying the fourth way?
Yeah, I want to add something that besides these important influences like the long-term study and application of the fourth way, as well as then later discovering meditative practices, because when we were in the fourth way, formal sitting meditation, it wasn't very important. Mm-hmm. So then later I discovered this kind of formal seated meditation for longer time, Vipassana Zen. And then what you mentioned with non-duality, studying with various teachers and David Hawkins, and then going into men's work, prison work, people who were not interested. I mean, there was just suffering, and they were in harsh conditions and terrible suffering, human suffering. And so that was also an element. And then getting into psychotherapy, somatic psychotherapy, which is different than the usual talk therapy or psychoanalysis and just head talking. So again, somatic psychotherapy. And then another big element which ties to what you're trying to ask me is going to this area of psychedelic assisted processing, where we are introducing in our pain body, in our consciousness, a substance like MDMA or psilocybin or ayahuasca or various medicines, not for purposes of entertainment, but for the purposes of going deep within the consciousness and subconscious. And those type of work, it goes, whether a person is an initiated, sophisticated practitioner or not, it goes into the depths of their emotional body, their so-called demons and monsters and all those things. So that was actually important. So knowing this, can you ask me again, just precisely what you wanted to know connected to repression or...
What has your years of work as a clinician in psychotherapy with shadow work, what has that shown you about consciousness?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
I was just going to say, being specific, consciousness relative to how the fourth way talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not as this not as our thoughts and feelings and sensations and all of that, but this consciousness, this awareness, we know we're here, we know we exist. This, what has this, I don't, I'll try to, as we go along, I'll try to fine tune my question, because I find it a little difficult to pinpoint as well, but I'm hoping as we talk, I'll have some more clarification and I'll be able to tighten up my questions some. But yes, I guess another way to say it is, where would you be today had you not ventured into the psychotherapy realm after your fourth way and non-dual journeys?
Yeah.
Maybe that ties into what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, you know, for maybe from 16 to 35, I was 35 years old, I'm 47 now. I was focused on this kind of work of having more awareness, so to say. Although looking back, doesn't make sense now, and it does make sense. So I was trying for a long time to have more awareness, to have more attention, to cultivate this layer of conscious attention. And I was doing a lot of this, bringing awareness to what I was aware of. I was bringing awareness to some layer of the sea that was there, and I was dealing for a long time with whatever those was, and I was engaged in this kind of harnessing attention to get to a point of that was point of some mysterious awakening, or some mysterious place with no thoughts, where there was some kind of, they say that when you line onto spirituality line, it's like you are lining on a long line for a store. And I know for Westerners this doesn't make sense, but in communism, you know, if you want to get meat or butter or oil or basic commodities, you need to line up and wait in a queue for a long time to get the meat. So taking this metaphor, I line up for the spirituality shop, and for a long time you can be there, you don't know what they are selling. You don't know. I mean, I'm lining up and I have good expectations, and I have all these stories of the saints and all of this Buddha and all that, and I hope for me to become enlightened, but for a long time we have no idea what they are selling. So I know I'm going a roundabout way, Peter. I had no idea the work I was doing with the fourth way, and even meditating a long time. I had no idea the depth of suffering that was within me, that I was barely scratching. I was barely touching that. And this was connected to, in the fourth way that we studied, and this is not necessarily, anyway, in that particular school, there was no focus at all on your childhood, what happened in your childhood, and the so-called wounds or pain body or trauma. There was nothing about that. The teacher was probably ignorant about this, and he himself did not process his earliest childhood imprints, you know. So I started to get into that later, and there was I'm grateful, because if I would have stayed, you asked me what would have happened. If I would have stayed just with witnessing and self-remembering and meditation in the way I was doing that, it would have been like to put some I think there's a metaphor in the Bible actually, like to put putting some good stuff on top of some toxic, highly reactive material, toxic reactive material, which was actually generating was fueling my eyes, my desires, my behaviors, how I showed up in the world, how I showed up with people, what was driving my energy was coming not just from the part in me that wanted to awaken and the part that wanted to find the truth and to find God, but a lot was coming from my unprocessed pain body. I like this term from Eckhart Tolle, which is an accumulation. Pain body is an accumulation of psychological suffering as well as energetic, somatic, in the body suffering from our childhood, from our life, a life spent in being unconscious and being asleep, and the accumulation of suffering of the patterns of separation and traumas inherited from our parents and from our ancestors. I have verified that I verified with myself and many people that we carry certain patterns of suffering, patterns of sense of separation that are very painful mentally, emotionally, physically. We have been, we have mirroring neurons. This is scientifically discovered as a baby and as a mammal. And I think, we are observing our parents and we are becoming them in some way. So it's not just what they are saying to us. Hey, little Mihai, I want you to go to school and work hard and be honest. And yeah, this is a small part of the programming, the conditioning we get in our centers, so to say, in our essence, basically. But just being raised in a society where everybody is in the second state and everybody is carrying strong inner conflicts and strong suffering that is pushed down in the subconscious, and on top of that they try to reach happiness and have a good life. Before I got into somatic psychotherapy and psychedelic work, I wasn't aware of the depth of pain that we store. And somehow I found out that the type of witnessing and the type of work I was doing seriously for 15 plus years didn't touch that yet. And I needed to go there with some other methods that were having me go into this pain is deeply buried. That's the tricky part. It's not like, hey, it's here on the surface. It's buried. It's pushed down in the subconscious. It's repressed. So I needed to find some other tools that were more surgical to go into it. Basically our so-called negative emotions or triggers or identifications or strong sense of me. I found out that if you follow the trail of that, it comes from some early imprints in our essence. And in that, there's a whole reservoir of unfelt feelings that were almost like too much for us to bear in childhood. So, and I verified that what Jung or Freud said was true to some degree, that these were pushed down as a survival strategy, pushed down when we couldn't handle them as a child consciousness. And then but if we want to develop spiritual and awaken later, that's where's the deepest suffering in some way. So that needs to be met by the light of consciousness, I was bypassing, Peter. I was bypassing completely. And meaning that I had suffering that I didn't know I had. And I was trying to reach awakening without even knowing my deepest suffering. And without seeing how there were some patterns created in childhood, they were creating patterns, mechanical patterns of way of being in the world, in relationship, especially in relationship with intimate partners, but ultimately in relationship with the whole world. I was completely unconscious of those things, and they were my deepest operating system, you know. And
You mentioned essence, and that's one of the other things I was thinking about to ask you is, the fourth way distinguishes between essence and personality, that essence is who we are as we are born, and then at a certain point, fairly young, we start to acquire, we could say, a personality. And our personality is all borrowed, all imitated, all acquired, or in some cases imposed and impressed on us by society, by family, by education. But essence is less complicated, you could say. Psychologically, it's more simple. So when you talk about repression and emotional repression, and you work with clients, do you think in those terms at all? Are we speaking principally essence? And if something has happened in essence, trauma to essence, let's say, it's more entrenched, more difficult to see, more difficult to uproot or release, versus I'm using words I'm thinking of because I don't know the terminology in your professional clinical work, but versus personality, which is, you can develop a certain attitude in your personality, and when circumstances rub up against that attitude, you get negative, you become negative, and it may be quite severe, quite intense, but in the end it can be broken down, and you can see, that was just an acquired attitude, and I started wrapping my sense of identity around it, and so I don't want to give it up, because if I do, I have to give up that sense of identity associated with it, whereas essence is different.
yeah,
What would you say?
yeah, for a long time I put aside, I abandoned the fourth way system, although I was still kept this presence, awareness, self-remembering, and a lot of other things. I don't know, it just stayed there, but I abandoned putting into the theory of the fourth way system what I was observing, which was good. And only more recently, I'm looking back at my work with clients and working with myself as a client, so to say. I'm looking from the lens of the fourth way, and I see, yeah, basically, when we are young, there's more essence. Yeah, the younger we are, there's more essence, and then essence is very vulnerable and very, very receptive, and can be deeply shocked and can be deeply impacted because it's not protected by this layer. You can see a child, like a small child, if you just raise your voice at the child, you can see how it hurts the child. It's shocked, and right then, even a small thing. What about like hitting the child and sexualizing the child or criticizing the child hundreds of times within the 10 years, So essence is very, very, very receptive, and whatever unlovingness, because that's what is unlovingness enters essence, unkindness, unlovingness, hurtfulness. Yeah. Also, my understanding of this, the adults who do that, is that they reached their maximum capacity to feel. The parents, they reach the maximum capacity to feel, and then they get really identified and negative, and then they are oozing unlovingness, and it can range from being shouted at to being really from beaten or neglected or criticized or put down or used, or anyway.
So then that becomes something that is repressed, could you say, in essence or by essence?
Okay. Let me focus up here. So essence is present. An arrow comes in, could be, and usually it's repeated arrow, yeah, and it goes in and it creates like a hurt. So now from the golden child archetype, like open and miraculous, like in essence everything is new and fresh, and there's no worry about it, spontaneity, freedom, openness. The shock comes in, and then there is a like, they call it now from the golden child. Now there is the wounded child. It's a hurt.
What about someone who suffers trauma and they're 15 or 21?
Yeah. Hang on.
25.
I'll go there. Let me tell you the process of what's happening. Yeah. So there's the hurt. There is the wounded child. Then what happens is that our consciousness has this amazing capacity to be resilient. So our species survives. So we as children, we can take so much. It's unbelievable. I have seen people on my couch that went through terrible, it makes me cry if I tell you people cry, terrible, nasty stuff. And they are here. They survived. There's a little girl. So it's an amazing resilience our body, mind, consciousness has. But what happens is that there's the hurt, and then somehow I know this, I verified this. What happens is that the child consciousness is naive and makes a meaning of what happened, of that hurt, makes a meaning. But because it's young and doesn't have enough information, it takes it personally. So let's say the father is a drunk and drug addict and violent, or, I'm giving you extreme cases, and is totally an asshole, and it shouldn't be allowed to have kids. It should be licensed, really. It should be a license to have kids, man. Anyway, so the child makes the meaning that, it means the fact that daddy is like that, it means something about me. So now there's the first big message, like it means that I am unlovable. It means that I am not safe. The world is not safe. It means that I can't be myself. It means that I have to be very careful. Anyway, all these messages, they come in at the non-verbal level, actually, non-intellectual level, but it's a way in which the child adapts so that to survive in an adverse environment, in an unloving environment, the child adapts. So it learns to adapt in order to have less shit, less suffering, and maybe to get love when love is so conditional. Yeah. So now from the, golden child is gone, wounded child is up, wounded child becomes a strategic child. Strategic essence. I am not spontaneous in myself. I am now in a certain way in order to get love, approval, and avoid problems. You see, this is already personality now. You see, it's a strong personality there.
That's what I was just thinking when you said strategic essence.
Yeah. So now there starts to form actually this strategic, in the fourth way, Gurdjieff was spot on. Every word he said with the formation of personality, and I don't remember now, but he was saying through imitation, through conditioning, and through resisting the environment. So basically, that's what it is. It's like I'm in an environment where I'm shouted at and slapped every day for something I don't know why. I'm not me personally, myself, but I'm talking as everyone.
Yes.
So
well, he also said that essence, in most cases, hides behind personality, which I think may be related here. He said in some rarer instances, personality will hide behind essence, but I think that's more nuanced to understand. But that personality forms as a shield, perhaps also to protect, yes, in this area you're talking about?
Yeah, it comes as a shield. That's like a protective pattern of being, which I give an example. Yeah, it's very important. It's very clear. It gets very clear that some kind of still a non-verbal yet very strong impulse that is like makes me show up in a certain way, like to not trust anybody, to not trust. There's a now contraction in the gut, and then scanning the world all the time for danger, and is not trusting, not trusting closeness, or having to hide. I need to hide. I need to hide myself in order to I have to stop being myself in order to get some love. I need to hide myself. I need to, yeah. So these are already the beginning of personality, but it's very strong personality. And it was very necessary.
Mm-hmm.
It was very necessary to, so we
And the
shift.
fourth way also speaks about this, that personality is not a bad thing. It is necessary. I mean, this is an unusual extreme case you're talking about, clearly, where there's been trauma or deep hurt, and now there's self-protectiveness.
Yeah, so this they become some kind of operating mechanical program that it tells us what to do. It's almost without thoughts. You need to be aware of the subconscious operating system, that it's continuously, you are going about the world like this. Be careful. Don't say that. Don't trust them. Hide. I have to hide. I have to work hard. I have to be good. Oh, they think of me. Oh, this becomes strong eyes, recurring eyes.
Mhm.
There's something wrong with me. Yeah, often the more unlovingness the child receives, the more it starts believing that there is something wrong with me. I am bad. I'm rotten. I am unlovable. I am unworthy. So this creates this sense of I in the personality as a deficient me. Many, the deficient collapsed. Then in the fourth way, then it becomes all this, self-pity, self-deprecation, self-doubt. But you see, like, this is self-doubt, self-deprecation. This is more like on top level that started 20 years ago, and underneath, that's the thing with the repression. Yeah, you want me about repression. When the moment of hurt happened many times, the essence felt some natural emotions, because we are so alive. You see a puppy, you see a child, it's so the emotion is right there. So when it was shocked or hurt, the essence will be like afraid, terrified, sad, hurt, angry.
It's interesting you mentioned puppies, because I know that, this can happen to dogs. You see it in dogs when they're maltreated. What's interesting to me in that case, and you could say there is an essence there in the animal. However, animals don't develop a psychological personality in response to hurt, but they do manifest, a dog who's really been abused and maltreated, as I said, they bark and they're aggressive and they're defensive and they're nasty. And you can see it's a defense mechanism, because there's nothing for them to be threatened by. And yet they take just a person walking by, as a threat.
Also, there are other ones that they are nice, and then you reach out to pat them and they're like this.
Yes.
So both of them in a psychotherapy world, it's a trauma response.
Yeah, that's a good example of the other side of that. Yes.
And it's not psychological. It's like instinctively, because cats and dogs, they are two brain beings, or two brain beings, so they don't have the intellect. But
so somebody comes to you, Mihai, and I'm not trying to divert you from what you're saying, but maybe it will help focus. Is somebody comes to you, they're not interested necessarily in awakening, in higher consciousness, in the pursuit of self-transformation and trying to discover what enlightenment is and all of that. They're not interested in that. They've been suffering pretty terribly, and they come to you for healing or balance or normalization or stabilization, or so they're not interested necessarily in awakening. How do you, and you know about the fourth way, and you know about non-duality, and you say that sometimes you bring that into what you're doing when you work with them, but you don't necessarily call it that.
Yeah.
So how are you bringing all of this understanding you have to trying to help people, and where are you hoping you will lead them?
Yeah. Depends. I assess where they are at in terms of, I guess, their level of conscious development. I guess I assess them where they're at, and so I would say they are roughly 3 categories, and these are my categories. And some people, they're not interested, let's say. They have regular suffering, but due to the severity of trauma, severity of lots of trauma, and also not having been lucky to be in an environment with guidance and intellectual knowledge and stuff like that, they what happens is that they are actually simple-minded and deeply hurt, to the point that their machine is a little bit damaged. So it's a little bit of it's been so much hit that the nervous system and the mind and the feeling and all that is deeply damaged. I mean, somehow. And at the same time, they don't have somehow, there's no interest in awareness, in spiritual teaching. There's no interest at all. And even it's hard for them to focus attention. Yeah, it's hard to sustain attention. So even when I was studying the psychotherapies I was studying, they were using awareness, mindfulness-based somatic psychotherapy. It wasn't just to talk about your problems, but more like to go inside and observe certain hot potatoes. And some people don't have, they don't have the ability to do that. And even if they do a little bit, then that it's what they notice inside is so intense that it actually, they can't handle what's inside. So that will be that's the most unfortunate case. And so if there is a case like that, then I mean, it's sad in some way. But what I do is that I cannot do any of the things that I'm really good at. So I'm more like I'm a loving, unconditionally accepting ear that might have never had, and I'm just kind and empathetical, and I hear them and I feel them, and I act as maybe the only adult that was not nasty in their life. And there's some healing value in that. There is something special about that. And I work with very severe traumatized teenagers and kids, and they say that a child like that that's been highly traumatized, it's like just to meet one adult that developed this loving connection that he can trust. Yeah, it's touching, because I have seen a lot of like terrible traumatized people and kids. Yeah. So
well, that's beautiful what you say and the way you say it. It kind of changes the whole tenor of our conversation, doesn't it? At least for the time being. But nevertheless, I'll ask you to go on and talk about your other two categories.
So also with the first category, also what I do is I'm like, it's not enough, because I'm feeling them, and I but they are going to go back there. So I teach them some coping skills, some very basic coping skills to deal with obsessive loops of negative thoughts, or some way which is hard, without awareness, without witnessing, to manipulate their body mind in some way, so they take themselves from really extreme suffering and find some source of refuge. And it's almost like having them shift attention from hell to do some drawing and some positive affirmations and listening to them nice music, and perhaps and also the way I interact with them psychologically, there's some teaching of, because they think that's normal. That's the thing. If you have been treated unlovingly, and then they really believe that's normal, that in a relationship you are treated like shit, and they really believe that they are really bad and shitty. So I'm helping them see it as not true. So I'm doing a little bit of listening to them, being kind to them, empathizing to them, being this ideal, this ideal daddy that they didn't have, or at least ideal uncle that is loving and compassionate. And sometimes I'm like just giving some advice, like, hey, dude, no, don't do that. It's going to hurt you a lot. You know, so this is more like the lowest level, which I respect that, and it needs to be done. I don't like to do that anymore somehow. I think there are many therapists that can do an awesome job with that. I have more interest in other areas, you know. So a second category would be, okay, they are still not interested. They are not seeking. They don't have what we call in a fourth way a magnetic center, reaching for information about awakening and God. But, you know, they've been hurt. They have traumas like all of us. But basically everybody, man, almost everybody. And they are somehow functioning. They are somehow functioning, and they have some stability in spite of the hurt and the suffering. You know, there's some strength and some resilience, and yeah. So with people like that, and they can develop attention. They can build this ability to witness themselves. So with this case, what I do, I like my work is like with people who are not interested. I still feel like I need to do these two things, to work on these two lines of work with them. One line of work is the being line of work, which I have to put it also, I in my intake, or I get to know them, I find out what are their influences. Some of them are interested in Eckhart Tolle, or maybe some of them they read the Four Agreements, or they read some spiritual book, or they have certain things. So I see where have they been at intellectually and psychologically, so I can meet them where they are at, and I can speak to them in a way that they can understand me. So I'll put the information I want to give to them, teaching about consciousness in a way they can understand me. So I teach them how to have some basic level of mindfulness and start to be able to do some self-observation, as we call in the fourth way, and to observe thoughts and to observe feelings, and to train them about this not to be in imagination, and to observe negative thoughts. And so I have them develop some some ability to be more aware and a little bit more awake, and so that they are witnessing and observing and cultivating some type of mindfulness / presence. Although they are not interested in awakening, if they are doing that, I give them homework, meditations, or I do it with them guided. They like it. That feels good. They notice, all of them, it feels like, it's calmer and something is happening. So, and although they are not interested in awakening, this will make them more conscious. So more
because you mentioned earlier the word refuge.
Yeah.
And I thought what you're saying now, to me, this ties into what you're saying now, perhaps, that this is where the bypass, you call it, can happen, where instead of, let's say, self-remembering, or the idea of resting in awareness or being present, instead of that becoming a reaching for something higher, a higher consciousness, a higher freedom, it becomes a refuge from pain, from suffering. And so it is interpreted that way, as not necessarily, because you just said it helps them be more awake or more conscious.
Yeah.
Can you clarify some of that?
Yeah. They are in a way that if they are practicing for some time this mindfulness, they are somehow a little bit less identified with the content of their experience, which in my book, they are a little bit more aware. Mm-hmm. So their spirit, I don't know how to call it, it's a little bit less sucked into phenomena. Yeah, this is good. I need this. I need them to have this, because soon I want them to bring this to their suffering. I need them to be a little bit more aware because I want them to take them to process their stuff. Yeah. But hang in there. At the same time, practicing mindfulness medically, it has a measurable effects. This awareness meditation, even if one is not doing it for to reach God or the meaning of life or to awaken one's potential, there are measurable effects on the nervous system, on the brain, on the circulatory, the blood. It's very beneficial. And it does this, what happens is that there's a nervous system regulation, it's called these days, or self-soothing. So somehow by meditating mindfulness in a very way, just mindfulness of the ego mindfulness, yeah, it has a soothing effect on
when you say that, do you mean the ego trying to be mindful? Or do you mean being mindful of the ego? I wasn't clear what you meant.
I think it's because when I teach these people like that, I'm not going into who am I, who is that which is aware. That will not be good. I made mistakes. I will initially, when I was newer therapist, I wanted to bring people to awakening, this or that, and I was talking about non-duality and and I would be like, dude, it's not useful. So I found out when it is useful to bring these teachings and when it is not useful and what is useful first. So anyway, there is a refuge. So the me that is suffering, whatever that is, Joe, hey, it's me, Joe, I'm suffering, I'm coming to you as a therapist. Me, Joe, I'm meditating. I'm watching the breath, and I'm coming back from imagination, and I'm noticing energies in the body, and I'm training them to observe and not resist and not get identified. Yeah, so this has a soothing, calming thing on the nervous system. And for many people, they live in a chronic state of nervous system is jacked up, is shot. So it's like anxiety or spinning thoughts and all the time. And that, if that state is chronic and nervous system shot, nothing can be happening there. So I need to bring them to a place that are more calm in the parasympathetic nervous system, so to say. And then I would like them ideally that they can do this on their own. So they can learn how to get themselves out of some washing machine, man. Because the many eyes, the thoughts and the feelings and all this stuff, it's like a cycle of washing machine. And if they can meditate and if they practice, they can get themselves out of a small washing machine cycle. If the cycle is strong, they are still going to get sucked into it, Anyway, but it's a little calmer. It's a little like, if your nervous system is shot, you can't think straight. You can't. So, this is helpful. And then the second line of work I do with these people is that I what I found out with people that are not interested in awakening, I found out what's the level of the human interesting, yeah, is that the more the more I help them to diminish their false personality, and the most toxic aspect of their false personality, and I help them to get a little bit closer to essence. How I'm doing that? I discovered that I'm having them bring their newfound sense of witnessing to meet their suffering. And I'm helping them do that in the session because they can't do it on their own. On their own, their suffering is too big and it eats them up and they are getting devoured by it. And instead of watching their suffering, they are being devoured in spinning thoughts and feelings and escaping and substances. And so I'm helping them face their suffering in a way that is manageable, and I'm tracking them. If I feel that it's too much for them, I'm backing them out a little bit. And then if I feel like that they can handle it, I have them keep, like, stick their nose to their suffering, stick their consciousness to that thing. And what I found that is the most suffering. Yeah, what is the most suffering in people that come to me? Whether they are trying to awaken or not. This is interesting. This is universal now. I have people that say, "Hey, dude, I'm awake. I had this awakening, and this is clear." And okay, this is another category, yeah. But even those, all of them, the ones that they say they're awake, the ones that they don't know about awakening, it's just everybody there on the proverbial couch, including myself. The suffering is created. I'm finding out two things quickly. I want to find this quickly. What are their core negative beliefs about themselves, core deficiency stories? Which is core deficiency story. It's a term from Scott Killaby, which actually is more like an awakened teacher, and he speaks about it. These core deficiency stories are actually core deficiency identity. Yeah, so I'm already using some kind of some form of some model of psychotherapy, which is transpersonal. Anyway, it's a lot here, and basically I'm helping them find out, and I'm helping them see, because I see it already in them. And even from when they answer their intake, I send them 10 questions about their past. And if they answer even like without like just basic stuff, I'm like, okay, I got it. I already have a sense from what they say, what are their deficiency identities, which in fourth way term, those deficiency identities will be some kind of most painful aspect of the false imaginary self, some kind of imaginary picture of myself that is charged with most psychological suffering, that creates most suffering, yeah, which will be these things like they come as ice cream flavors. And it's interesting, not too many, like 10. Everybody has some of that. Something wrong with me. I am bad. I am unlovable. I'm not good enough. And can't be myself. I'm not safe. I have to, other so these are lies. I know this is, from my point of view, this is a lie. This is complete misunderstanding, but it's so thick in them. So I can't say, hey, dude, you are not good enough. You are a aware divine being, a child of God. You are just confused and asleep. There's nothing wrong with you, bro. I sometimes say that because it's like shocking, but doesn't work to just tell them this. They need to face those gremlins. So I'm trying to identify them, and everybody has 2 or 3 of them. From one angle, in fourth way, this will be some chief feature or core of the false personality. Yeah, and that's painful if I really believe that there's something wrong with me, or that I am unlovable, or I'm unworthy, or I'm rotten, I'm scum, or I'm unsafe. This is not just a thought. This comes with like thousands and thousands of thoughts and feelings and like terrible stuff that then we try to push it down, and on top of that to be good and to prove myself. If I believe there's something wrong with me, I'm constantly trying to prove myself, and now I'm considering everybody, and then I am self-sabotaging all my activities, So I'm trying to they identify that, and in a certain kind of skillful way, I am trying to have them realize 2 things. that those thoughts, what it says, that story is not true. I want them to see that it's not true. And second, that is not them. There's not.
Okay, because this touches on one of the basic questions I was going to ask you. Who is repressed? And who is trying to undo this repression?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer that question, but I just now, but yes. So that's interesting. You tell them it's not true and it's not them.
Yeah. But one needs to really allow this thought to attack you, and while staying present, that says, no, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough, with tension in the chest and in the thing, and it's a lot of emotion, and also, yeah. So I'm having them see that, hey, this is just a thought, man. I know it's a pain. It's a thought, and also I have them discover when it was formed. Actually, this helps very much. I go down the trail of their subconscious, not just talking. It's like some, let's say, more like a trance state or whatever. But where they see how, when they were 5 years old, something happened or multiple things happened, and then this belief was developed by a 6-year-old in connection to mommy, and in connection to daddy, some other belief was formed about that. So I'm having them see, basically, to see what happened there. And I'm having them see that the belief that I'm something wrong with me or I'm unlovable, it has a lot of subconscious payoff. And it keeps them seemingly safe. And it seemingly helps them. So before they see these subconscious utilities as false, they need to see all of this. And somehow in the seeing of this, they are seeing their subconscious mechanical operation and the forming of their personality, and they are observing their wounding. And whether they know that what is consciousness, all that, consciousness is here, aware. So for them, their consciousness is aware of those stuff, and I am helping them stay within the window of tolerance, meaning it's not too intense. If it's too intense, a regular person can't stay present. So I'm titrating them so that it's bearable. And this bearable depends, I can bear much more. I can sometimes go into all kind of stuff, and sometimes the therapist responsibly checks with me, hey man, you're okay? Can you go further? I'm like, yeah, let's go. But to some people, like, you can see that this is like too much, and then it's almost like a re-traumatization, So
you said a few minutes ago that for the most part, everyone on your proverbial couch who comes to you is suffering from the same thing. Did I misunderstand you?
No.
Can you come back to that and touch on that in the light of what you've been saying?
Yes. The same thing, I would say, is two things. One thing I just explained to you, the deficiency identity. There's some deficiency identity. Most people come to me with deficiency identity. The ones with inflated ego identity, they usually don't come to therapy. So I guess even in clinical world, the narcissistic personality disorder, no narcissistic personality disorder comes to therapy. It's more like their wives and husbands, they are coming to therapy, So, however, we can have, some people can have an inflated sense of superiority connected with some deficiency identity. So I start with that because this is easier to discover, and however it is core in the somatic therapeutical lingo. Core material, core. This is a special term, meaning that this is like the heart of your suffering right there. And actually, successful psychotherapy, you're trying to get to the core quickly, because otherwise you're just like talking, it's just not very impactful. The second suffering that we all have is this what is called not being real, not being authentic, incapable. We are incapable of being real and authentic because of all that wounding and adaptation and strategic adaptation for safety that was formed layer after layer, which is not just in the mind, it's not just in the intellect, it's in the emotional, it's in the body, it's in the gut, it's in the cells, it's in the muscle, it's in everywhere. So this inability to be ourselves, inability to be fully authentic according to essence, that creates a lot of suffering, psychological suffering, emotional suffering, even physical suffering, medical suffering. And now there are science that many diseases that were supposed to be physical, it's more like emotional. This inauthenticity begins with, it's connected to the wounding. Like the child found out painfully that it is not okay to feel this emotion. If a little boy is crying, the daddy who is a macho kind of fundamentalist, something is like, don't cry. Strong boys don't cry. I'll give you something to cry. Only you don't be a pussy. Bam. Right there. It's like sadness is bad. Sadness is bad. And showing sadness is dangerous. Yeah. This starts to form with emotions, with just basic emotion, like the child consciousness learned that it's not safe to feel anger or to express it, to feel sadness and to share it, to feel fear and to share it. So it learned that one or two or three or all of them are not okay. And among basically this emotion, like joy, even joy repression. Children need to be seen but not heard. Go to the room, don't make noise. Children have a lot of joy, enthusiasm, and like this. And the adults, they don't like that. So it's like you need to domesticate the child. So basically all of these things where our emotional body, anger, sadness, fear, grief, hurt, joy, love, and affection it's messed with. These have been messed with, and also our parents had them. And the compounding problem is that the people who raised us had them repressed, and the some of it. And the people who raised us, they never taught us what to do with our emotions because they themselves didn't know. Yeah. So this, what I just said, this is very painful, and this creates a lot of problems in every aspect of life, in awakened beings too. I noticed that also more awakened beings or more evolved beings or people who are even teaching on YouTube and teaching satsangs, they still have some of this unprocessed. So that's an area that I'm trying to, it's hard. So this will be more advanced work to have them in a particular kind of way that they retrain themselves to allow themselves to feel this emotion without trying to resist them or getting rid of them or being lost in them. But for many people, let's say, if all my life I needed to hide sadness, now if sadness comes, now sadness will come and there will be on top of it a lot of fear. There will be sadness and then fear of sadness and fear of feeling this and then all kind of stuff. So it's a deep emotional constipation at the extreme level. And then, so I'm trying with people who are not trying to wake up to do that, which will have the result, if they put enough time into it, and they do homework. I'm not like a magician, man. Fuck. They need to do their homework, and they need to practice, and they need to stay involved in it. What will happen is that they realize, it's amazing, they realize, oh my God, this is not true, and it harassed me all my life, and actually, and then there are kind of changes in their life somehow. You know what happened, their essence, which is, from one angle, it's a divine essence, even if we are asleep. The essence has gifts and has talents, and has essence, is able to be happier, man. to be more content with life a little bit. So they are this oppressive, painful beliefs weaken. They may still come sometimes, but they are not coming so often. Yeah. And some of them collapse altogether. And then the more advanced clients, so to say, they start to undo repression. And this is awesome. I mean, it's very hard, because then I'm no longer fighting myself anymore. This not allowing myself subconsciously to feel and express this takes so much energy. This is big leaking of energy. In my book, is equal to the leaking of energy of imagination, of all of these obstacles we talked in previous, the holding back of myself. It's a lot of effort to hold back myself, and we don't even know we are doing it. And this state of affairs creates a tense body and contractions in the body and very active mind, and and then it's very hard to be in this state. So usually people, they try to escape it with drugs, with whether they are legal or not, legal, illegal activities, to escape, so in order to not feel these constant knots, this constant fear, so I'm escaping it. And some of them, they are discovering meditation and Buddha, and then they instead of smoking joints or having vodka, they are doing meditation. But it goes further. That is a harm reduction model. It's less harm in doing meditation. So I guess this is what I'm doing. And of course, the category which I like the most to work with, and now where I'm at, I'm more, again, as I said before, they are even in the second category of therapists. I think they are people, good therapists, that can do this work. What I like the most is, in terms of, to be more like therapy of awakening, or using these processing tools like shadow work, or processing trauma in a psychosomatic way, or reversing repression. Yeah, so all of this processing of the personal me, unwinding of the, so I discovered that those things need to happen also for a person who is on the process of evolutionary path of awakening, and even the teachings, the non-duality, they talk about this indirect path, that in the direct path you're trying to go straight for the prize, to discover who or what am I, and what is the nature of the true self. That's in the direct path, going straight for that. And they say there that at some point that one may get the answer, so one will get the visceral experiential answer that the true identity is the aware presence, and that it's not limited or finite. But they say that that's like 30% of the job. Then there's still necessary to engage in this post-awakening sadhana, post-awakening practice, to clean up. Like Francis Rupert, Jean Klein, and from that tradition, they talk about there's this awakening, which was some kind of consciousness realizing itself in some way. But then they said, hey, don't think that this is over. No, it's not over at all, because you have lived a life in mechanical patterns of separation. So in order to really enjoy the fruits of awakening, meaning like peace, fulfillment, love, that is good, it's not just tortured awakening. Then we need to do this post awakening sadhana, cleaning up, meaning that the body and the mind, they still have accumulated decades of having been in separation, and those need to be processed out. So I have people that come to me that have been serious practitioners or serious, Buddhists or even spiritual teachers or stuff like that, gurus. I mean, and but they realize that, oh, there's some more, I have some cleanup thing to do that shows up as some sticky stuff, or so I'm just, so then with those people, I don't even go into awareness too much, because they somehow got that they are reporting, and I felt like it's true, they have a good understanding about awareness, and they can return to that and be that often. So they got that wherever before they came to me, they got that, and they have their own practice, and they are more and more aware and awake in some gradation, but they have some skeletons left over. So I'm helping them to bring those skeletons and witness them and do the same work I talked before, but with somebody who is very aware, and this goes much easier. And there's much less resistance to emotions and all that. So